And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Friday morning's flying weather graphic showing band of IFR here across the southern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, right up into Kodiak Island and pushing up along the southern Kenai Peninsula. Pretty much VFR here in the central interior with marginal VFR from the upper Yukon Valley, Brooks Range on out to the Arctic Ocean, and marginal VFR North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, right on down the southeast coast. And then moving on to Friday afternoon, sees IFR building here over the Gulf of Alaska, pushing up along the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, covering Kodiak Island, and then back to the west with improving out here to marginal VFR for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. VFR in the central interior, marginal VFR, Brooks Range on out to the coast. And VFR holds here over the southeast coast and probably even around Yakutat as well. And then for the Saturday morning time frame, we've got IFR now up into Prince William Sound and along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. VFR here holding over northern Cook Inlet and into the Susitna Valley. IFR pushing right up along the coastline of the Panhandle with marginal VFR eastward there to the border. Marginal VFR again, North Slope and Arctic Coast. Good VFR in the interior, all the way out to the southwest coast now. Just some marginal VFR here over this south central and southeastern Bering Sea. A little bit of IFR along the north side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then west of Adak, VFR. For the afternoon, VFR here, northern Bering Sea down to Nunivak Island, right across the interior to the border. South of the Alaska Range, conditions deteriorate down to IFR for the North Gulf Coast. Some of that trying to get into the southern Copper River Basin. And IFR down across the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, then up the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. And still looks like VFR here for the Susitna Valley into northern Cook Inlet, maybe Knik Arm. And again, good VFR in the interior, marginal VFR southeast Bering Sea, and from Adak eastward to the Alaska Peninsula, and mostly IFR there for the southeast coast. And for passes, Brooks Range, marginal VFR once again for both Anatuvik and Adigan for Friday, and then for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR. Rainy starting out VFR, but becoming marginal VFR. And for windy, VFR for the day Thursday, Isabel VFR, Mintasta also looking pretty good. Tanita VFR and Portage, marginal VFR becoming IFR probably during the morning hours, definitely in the afternoon. And Chilkoot and White, pretty good VFR for Thursday. And for the freezing levels, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet here over the southeast coast, and then that 2,000 feet up along the North Gulf Coast there into Bristol Bay and just north of the Aleutians, but south of the Pribilofs. And moving on to icing. That big storm coming up in the frontal system there, look for considerable moderate rime icing here, shifting up into the southern Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and back into Kamishak Bay there to the Aleutian Range, spilling into Bristol Bay, another zone here right over the Alaska Peninsula. And from there, looking at the jet stream, south to north flow here, pulling a lot of moisture up right up into the North Gulf Coast. So you can see 90 knots, and then kind of taking off to the northeast there over kind of a building ridge here farther to the south. And then a pretty sharp trough here, northern Bering Sea down southward toward the eastern Aleutians. Strong northerly flow on the backside of that up to 130 knots into the western Aleutians. And for 9,000 feet, east-southeast winds up to 80 knots here, coming right on up toward the Kenai Peninsula there. And then northeast 60 knots across the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. And a broad area of northerly winds here out over the Bering Sea, anywhere from 40 to 50 knots. And then into the Gulf of Alaska, strong winds ahead of that frontal system there, pushing slowly eastward and northward. And for 9,000 or 3,000 feet, here's the strong winds here, 65 to 80 knots there, blowing into the Barren Islands and toward Kamishak Bay, with very strong winds here pushing northward to the North Gulf Coast. Winds on the increase over the Panhandle. And then northeast winds 60 to 65 knots coming around this low center that's southeast of the Alaska Peninsula. So with that, taking a look at turbulence, look for possibility of severe turbulence, especially for smaller aircraft here. Surface of 5,000 feet, mostly for the eastern Aleutians, maybe into the extreme western Alaska Peninsula area. And then considerable moderate turbulence in a big area here from the Gulf of Alaska right in across the southwest interior, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, and much of the eastern and southeast Bering Sea to about Atka Island.